Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Today we've got a few things to discuss, including a signing over with the Arizona Coyotes, a significant four-player trade between the Colorado Avalanche and the San Jose Sharks, a couple of injury updates from around the NHL, and some trade rumors involving the Dallas Stars, St. Louis Blues, and Ottawa Senators. And we'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello and welcome to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. I'll kick things off today by discussing a signing that has happened recently, as the Arizona Coyotes have given an extension to Juuso Valimaki, signing him to a one-year, $1 million extension that will kick in at the beginning of next season. Now, Valimaki had played in a few seasons with the Calgary Flames since being drafted in the first round of 2017. Valimaki was a really good prospect. He played parts of 3 seasons with the Flames. His first year, he only got into 24 games toward the end of the season. His best season with the Flames was the shortened season a few years ago, when he was able to get into 49 games, was a good third-pair defenseman, and put up 11 points. And it sort of seemed like that he would just grow from that and be a consistent, good defenseman for the Flames. But then as soon as Daryl Sutter became the coach of the Calgary Flames, he sort of fell out of favor. He played a few games in the NHL last year with the Flames, but was mostly playing in the minors. And the Flames didn't really see a fit with him again this year and placed him on waivers. And he was a waiver claimed by the Arizona Coyotes. So the Coyotes definitely saw some value in him. And he's actually done quite well. He's been playing up and down the lineup for the Arizona Coyotes. Started out in a top 4 role. Been more of a third-pair defenseman ever since Chychrun came back. But he's had his best season to date. He has 2 goals and 12 points in 44 games. Done quite well with the Arizona Coyotes. Already topped his career high from that shortened season a couple of years ago. And he looks like a really, really good player for the Arizona Coyotes. I think they found a really good player here. Now, he did have a qualifying offer of $1.8 million that the Arizona Coyotes would have had to give him. So the fact that they were able to agree to a $1 million extension is quite good for the Arizona Coyotes, given the fact that Valimaki had all that leverage. But it seems like Valimaki also likes playing in Arizona with his bigger role and opportunity with the Coyotes. And the Coyotes seem to have found a really good third-pair defenseman at least. So I think the extension is really good. Valimaki should continue to be a good point-producing defenseman for the Arizona Coyotes. Wouldn't surprise me if he possibly hit 20 points this year and maybe continue to grow off of that. And with Arizona possibly moving guys like Chychrun and Gostisbehere before the deadline, it's quite possible Valimaki gets an even bigger role before the season ends. So definitely think that the extension is good, and I think Valimaki should continue to play well with the Arizona Coyotes. Next, we'll go over to the injury update part of the video. I'll start with the St. Louis Blues, as the Blues have had a lot of good injury news over the past little while. Now, we know that the Blues have been dealing with a lot of injuries this year, dating back to the offseason when they lost Scandella and Peronovich due to injuries. But they are finally getting some more players back. Vladimir Tarasenko and Torrey Krug, who both suffered injuries in late December. Krug had a lower body injury, and Tarasenko had a hand injury, have both been activated off of IR and are back into game action. Logan Brown, who was dealing with upper body injury, has now returned for the St. Louis Blues as well. And even though they've had all that good news, Pavel Buchnevich has been placed in injury reserve and is week to week with an ankle injury. Now, for the 3 players they got back, this is huge for them. The Blues are not in a really good position right now and could wind up being sellers at a deadline, so getting Tarasenko back is really important. Tarasenko seems to be maybe one of the biggest trade chips of the St. Louis Blues, and getting him back is going to be extremely important. Tarasenko is a really good top 6 forward, and if they can show other teams that he's healthy and can still play at a really high level, then it's possible that he could be traded at the deadline. I think getting him back is going to be a huge boost to the Blues as well. They've definitely had a bit of a banged-up offensive group with some of their bigger name guys going down, so getting Tarasenko back is huge. And even if they don't try to wind up to trade him, getting Tarasenko back could help the playoff push as well. The Blues have had a ton of injuries on the blue line. I mean, you had Scandella, you had Peronovich, Bortuzzo's been out for a little while, Krug has also been out for a while, and they've had to use guys like Calle Rosen and Tyler Tucker on that third pair. So getting Krug back is a huge improvement on that blue line. He's not the better of the Blues defensemen. I think Parayko and Falk are better than Krug right now. But still, getting Krug back is important. He's a good top 4 defenseman. He plays on the left side, which is probably their most banged up side right now. They still have Falk and Parayko on the right side, but most of those injuries have been coming on the left side. They've been having to use Mikkola and Leddy in bigger roles, which hasn't been helping them much. So getting Krug back to the lineup will be huge, and he should help shore up that top four for the time being. And getting Logan Brown back is not as big as the additions of Tarasenko or Krug, but Brown is a serviceable bottom six forward. He's not played too much this year, been in and out of the lineup due to injuries, but seeing him healthy again is a good sign. I know he had a pretty good year last year in his first season with the Blues, and if he can get some consistency and is a really good bottom six forward, I think he can still be a really good, productive guy for the St. Louis Blues. So getting these three guys back is going to help the Blues playoff push. Losing Buchnevich is not overly great. He's definitely been one of the Blues' better forwards this year, along with guys like Kyrou and Thomas. So losing him for the next few weeks due to the ankle injury is not going to be good for them. They do get Tarasenko back, but they lose Buchnevich. So hopefully Buchnevich can get back soon. I hope that it's not only like a week or two and this doesn't drag out for a long period of time, but we will have to wait and see. But definitely getting Krug, Tarasenko, Brown back to the lineup is a huge boost to the Blues. And with the Blues right now on the outside looking in, getting these three guys back into the lineup is going to be a huge boost for the Blues. Over with Seattle, they've had both good and bad news on the injury front. A week and a half ago, Jaden Schwartz went down with an undisclosed injury, and he's been out day-to-day for the last week and a half. He's missed a few games for the Seattle Kraken. Justin Schultz went down with an injury just last week, and he's out week to week right now with an undisclosed injury. But they have gotten back Burakovsky and Yanni Gourde off of their injuries. Now, Gourde didn't miss any time at all. He was injured in the Kraken game earlier this week, but was able to get right back into game action in yesterday's match for the Seattle Kraken. So not too much of a surprise there. Gourde's been a really good middle six forward for the Kraken this year, so it's good to see that he didn't miss much time. Burakovsky only missed, I think, 1 or 2 games due to his injury. He wasn't out for too long, and Burakovsky has been a really great addition to the Kraken lineup, and one of the Kraken's better offensive forwards. The fact that he was only missed a couple games is really good. He wasn't out for a long period of time, and he should be slotted right back in the top 6 role. And he should be continuing to be a really good offensive driving forward for the Kraken. But the bad news is that they have lost Jaden Schwartz and Justin Schultz. Now, Schwartz is still right now day-to-day. There's no real significant timeline as to when he's going to be back. I mean, he's been day-to-day for the last week and a half, so it's quite hard to predict when he will be back. But hopefully it's not going to be too long, maybe like a week, week and a half, maybe sometime before then. It's really hard to predict, but Schwartz has missed a little bit of time now, so hopefully he can get back to being healthy in the near future. As for Schultz, he's been a really good addition for the Kraken side in the offseason to be a good top 4 defenseman, and he has been. The Kraken do have a little bit of a weaker blue line, not really much depth after their top 7 players. So losing Schultz, especially for the next few weeks, is not going to be good. Schultz has already missed about a week's worth of action due to his injury, so hopefully he can get back sometime around maybe just after the All-Star break. But definitely, losing one of their top 4 defensemen is not good. And having one of their top 9 forwards out for the last week and a half, and maybe for a little bit while longer, is not also great for the Kraken. But getting Burakovsky and Gourde back in the lineup are huge. And hopefully those other 2 can get back healthy soon, as the Kraken are actually leading the Western Conference right now in points, and continue to look like a deadly team this year in the Western Conference. Over with the Anaheim Ducks, they got a few guys back from injury last week. Now, Isaac Lundstrom, who had missed the last couple of weeks, maybe closer to a month, due to a finger injury, was able to get back last weekend and return to game action for the Ducks. That was a pretty big improvement for the Anaheim Ducks forward group. Lundstrom's a good third-line center, and he had been missed for a while. So, given the fact that they had to use some of the guys like a Magna or a Carrick in Lundstrom's spot, it wasn't really overly ideal. So, getting Lundstrom back into the game action, really a good improvement for the Ducks. I know he's not the best of the Ducks forwards, but he's a good young piece. So, getting him back in the lineup was good. Now, during that game, they also lost McTavish, but he was only out for 1 game. And he was able to slot back into game action earlier this week. So that's good that he didn't miss too much time. McTavish is in his rookie year and seems to be a strong candidate to be a long-time top 6 member for the Anaheim Ducks. So getting him back into the lineup is good. It's good that he didn't miss too much time due to his injury. And hopefully McTavish can continue to do really good in his rookie year as a top 9 forward for the Ducks. Over in Ottawa, I know we talked about them in our latest video, having a little bit more healthier, but they did have a couple of injuries over in their past few days. Mark Kastelic missed the last game for the Ottawa Senators due to an undisclosed injury and is going to be out for an unknown period of time. So, bad news for the Ottawa Senators. Kastelic is a really good fourth-line forward, has really excelled this year and really stolen that fourth-line forward role from a guy like a Dylan Gambrell or Derek Brassard. So he's definitely run with it and had a really good season as a fourth-line center for the Sens. So losing him is not going to be great. He's out for an unknown period of time, so it's really hard to pinpoint when he's going to be back into game action, but definitely a decent blow to the Ottawa Senators' bottom six. As for their goaltending situation, they lost Cam Talbot in their game yesterday against the New York Islanders, and he didn't return, so that's not really good news. I know they did call up Kevin Mendolis from the AHL to maybe possibly replace Talbot, so I'm not sure exactly how long that means Talbot will be out. He currently seems to be dealing with a lower body injury and is going to be out for an unknown period of time too, so the Sens are not in a really good position right now, currently out of the playoff spot by a handful of points, and losing their starting goaltender is not going to help make matters better. So hopefully Talbot can get back soon. He's a really good piece for that Sens group. Even though he isn't as big a piece, hopefully Kastelic can also get back into game action soon for the Sens, who continue to try and push for a playoff spot. And then with New York Rangers, they got a few guys back from injuries over the past little while, as forward Chris Kreider was back from injury last week, and Julien Gauthier was back off of his injury over the weekend, and both have gone back into game action. Kreider's a pretty big piece on that Rangers top six, so losing him for a week wasn't really overly ideal, but the Rangers were able to make do without him, and getting him back was really a big boost for the Rangers. They're still one of the better teams in the Metro Division, so getting him back is a pretty big boost for New York. As for Gauthier, he wasn't as big of an addition as Kreider. He is definitely still a really good bottom six forward, but he's not to the level as Chris Kreider, so getting him back was not as important as Kreider, but definitely getting him back is still really good. He was the only player on injury reserve for the Rangers, so getting him back means that the Rangers are now completely healthy again, and he's still really good fourth line forward. So getting Gauthier and Kreider back will help the Rangers team a lot, and hopefully the Rangers can continue to be a really good Metro team, as they're really in a tight race for a top 3 spot in the Metro. Currently are holding down that 3rd spot in the Metro. Now that's all the injury updates I want to talk about today. Now before we go over to the trade rumors, I'm going to discuss a significant trade that happened recently between the Colorado Avalanche and San Jose Sharks, as the Colorado Avalanche sent forward Martin Kaut and defenseman Jacob MacDonald to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for Matt Nieto and defenseman Ryan Merkley. Now, this is a pretty good trade for both teams in my opinion. I'll start with the Avalanche. They get Matt Nieto, who's actually familiar with the team. Nieto started his career in San Jose and was actually moved after a few seasons to the Avalanche. And he played, I think, a better part of 4 seasons with Colorado and had some of his better years there, and definitely was a really good point producing forward for the Avalanche, putting up consistently 20-25 points with the Avs. And then he left via free agency to San Jose, and had spent the past 2 years plus this season with the San Jose Sharks, having decent numbers. But this year was probably one of his better seasons with the Sharks, as he has so far 8 goals and 15 assists in 45 games with the San Jose Sharks, and has definitely been a really good middle 6 forward for the Sharks. I know, due to some injuries and having a lot of other bottom 6 players, Nieto had spent a majority of the time in the Sharks' middle 6, so he had a little bit of a expanded role, and he was definitely able to produce in those sorts of roles. He had missed a little bit of time due to injury, but definitely think that the addition of Nieto for the Avs will be good. He's sort of like the Andrew Cogliano addition that they had last year at the deadline, sort of like a good depth player who can get points at key times, especially in the playoffs. So I really do like this addition for the Avs. I think Nieto will definitely fit in with the Avalanche, his second stint with the Avs, and I think that he should definitely be a really good fit with Colorado, maybe on the 3rd line or 4th line. I would say with Landeskog injured right now, he'll probably start on the 3rd line. Once they get a little bit more healthier, maybe he slots down onto the 4th line, but definitely think that this is a really good pickup for the Avalanche. As for Merkley, we know that he wanted out of San Jose. He wasn't liking the opportunity he got there. He had a okay season last year, splitting time between NHL and AHL. He was actually able to get into 39 NHL games, putting up a goal and 6 assists, and looked like he could be a good third pair defenseman going forward. But he also spent some time in the AHL as well last year. And so far this year, he's only spent time in the AHL. So far this year, he's only spent time in the AHL, putting up 14 assists in 30 AHL games. So he hasn't had the productiveness he did last year. He was a former first-round pick. He was the 21st overall pick in the 2018 draft. So he definitely was drafted with some pretty good potential, but he just hasn't been able to live up to that at the NHL level so far in his career. So I think the fresh start should definitely help Merkley. With the Avalanche getting rid of MacDonald in this trade to San Jose, Merkley can probably start at the NHL level. I know in a healthy Avalanche lineup, I doubt he'd actually make the Avs top 6, but the Avalanche currently have Bowen Byram and Josh Manson out due to injuries, and have using guys like Jacob MacDonald and Andreas Englund, who were 8th and 9th on their depth charts, on their third pair this year. So I think it's quite possible Merkley goes straight up and to the NHL and plays third pair minutes with the Avalanche. I think it's definitely a likely possibility. And I think on a more offensive Avalanche team, if he can show that he's a good third pair defenseman, maybe the Avalanche are able to unlock his offensive potential. I think it's definitely a really good possibility, and I definitely like the 2 pickups for the Avalanche. As for the Sharks, I think they also get a couple of pretty good players. Now, for Jacob MacDonald, he's a serviceable third pair defenseman. He had spent the better part of the last 3 seasons plus this year with the Avalanche in the organization. He started in the AHL, but over the past few years he had gotten some NHL opportunities with the Avalanche when they were a bit banged up. This year, due to their injuries, they had Manson out, Girard out for some time, Makar's been injured at some points, Byram's that had very few games where he's been healthy. Due to all these injuries, he's definitely had an extended look in the NHL. So far only having 2 assists, but playing in 33 NHL games this year. And I definitely think that with the Sharks possibly moving on from Erik Karlsson at some point maybe this year in the offseason, they sound like they want to move on from Marc-Andre Vlasic. There's been some talk that maybe a Mario Ferraro could be moved. And even some depth players like a Megna or a Harrington could be moved in the near future for the Sharks. It does seem like MacDonald could be a good serviceable third pair defenseman for the Sharks in the short term. He does have this year plus next year on his deal at a cheap $763,000 cap it, so I do think he could easily be a good fit with the San Jose Sharks. He should be able to get more NHL time with the San Jose Sharks, with the Sharks having a little bit less depth on their defense, but definitely think he should be able to get some more NHL action this year. But I think the more important player for the Sharks was Kaut. Now, I have seen some people who said that Merkley is a lot better of a prospect than Kaut, and that the Avs won the deal because Merkley is going to be a lot better than Kaut in Colorado. And I think that is possible. But I also think Kaut could definitely benefit from the move to San Jose. Kaut was a 16th overall pick in 2018 by the Colorado Avalanche. So Kaut was taken 16th in the 2018 draft. Merkley was taken 21st in the 2018 draft. So both of these guys were drafted with pretty high potential as being good top-end players in the NHL, and both haven't been able to find that success at the NHL level. So I think the swap will do both good. I think for Kaut, he had gone into some NHL action. He had a goal and 3 points in 27 NHL games this year. He's played some parts of the last few seasons in the NHL, but has mostly been a good AHL producer. He's also played in the AHL this year, putting up 5 goals and 8 points in 10 AHL games. And I definitely think that Kaut, while he has not had that good of a showing in the NHL, also hasn't been given that big of an opportunity. I think Kaut was never going to be a good forward with the Avalanche when he has to beat out guys like Lehkonen and Newhook and Nichushkin and Rodriguez and all of those guys on the Avs forward group. But I think it would be a lot easier for him to beat out some of those depth players on the Sharks forward group, especially given the fact that the Sharks just moved Nieto. So I think while he probably doesn't have the offensive upside that Merkley does as an offensive defenseman, I think that if Kaut can find his game, he could be a good physical third-line forward at the very least for the San Jose Sharks. So I think if he can get some more playing time with the Sharks, which I think he will with not as many players to try and leapfrog on that Sharks roster, I think he could easily be a good bottom six forward for the San Jose Sharks. So I would like to know what you think. Who do you think won this deal between the Avs and the Sharks? In my opinion, I would say the Avalanche probably do win this deal at this point because Nieto's a really good bottom six forward who can help this Avalanche team try and win the cup again this year. And Merkley probably has the better offensive upside between him and Kaut. But I think that the Sharks' return is not too bad with a serviceable third-pair defenseman in MacDonald coming back and a Kaut who could, I think, in time, if he finds his game, could still be a good bottom middle six forward for the San Jose Sharks. I definitely don't think this is the only trade for the Avs and the Sharks. I definitely think that for the Avalanche, they're still looking at a second-line center to improve that center group. I definitely think that for the Avalanche, they could definitely look at possibly trying to get a second-line center. I think it's really the only glaring issue for the Avalanche. And if they can get a second-line center, maybe this team looks as lethal as it did last year when they won the Stanley Cup. As for the Sharks, I definitely don't expect this to be the only trade they make. There's a lot of talk about possibly moving Timo Meier, maybe Nick Bonino, possibly goalie James Reimer. So there's a lot of things in play right now for the San Jose Sharks. And I definitely don't expect this to be the only trade, but definitely going to be interesting to see what the next move is for the Avalanche and the Sharks. So definitely good to see a trade happen. Hopefully this is a sign of more things to come. Not sure how many more trades would happen between now and the All-Star game, but I think after the All-Star game for sure, there will be a whole bunch more trades like this coming soon. So hopefully we'll get more trades in the near future. Now that leads us over to the trade rumor part of the video. We'll start with the Ottawa Senators. Now, it sounds like the Senators and Kings might be talking about a trade. There was a lot of talk that the Ottawa Senators GM was at a few LA Kings games, possibly scouting some players. We know the Senators really do want a defenseman who could step in and help this Senators blue line. We know they've been in on basically everyone who's available. We've heard them be linked to guys like Jacob Chychrun, Matt Dumba. There have been a few others as well. And the fourth period said that the Sens may have some interest in Kings defenseman Sean Walker. Now, there was also some talk on Twitter that maybe the Kings and Sens would possibly be working out a deal to send Talbot to LA in exchange for Matt Roy. I don't think that's a good trade for the Ottawa Senators. They really do like Talbot, and I think maybe an extension is more likely than a trade of Talbot. But I definitely think that maybe acquiring Sean Walker is their defensive upgrade for the Sens. I know that Walker isn't the best of defensemen. He's not probably the big name that the Sens wanted. But we know that the Kings really want a good left shot defenseman, and they don't have too much cap space. Plus, they have a lot of right shot defensemen, and it does sound like they would be possibly willing to move one right shot defenseman to maybe create cap space so they can go after left shot defensemen. And it does seem like maybe a Walker to Ottawa could be a possibility. Not exactly sure what else would be going in that sort of a trade. I'm not exactly sure what the Kings would want in a Walker trade. But definitely think that maybe Ottawa and LA could be talking trade right now. And maybe it could be surrounding one of the Kings' right shot defensemen. Maybe it's Walker. Maybe it is Matt Roy. But definitely going to be interesting to see where Ottawa goes to try and acquire that defenseman that they really want. It does sound like they're going to be trying to improve that blue line no matter who it is before the trade deadline comes March 3rd. And I think it is possible they may try and pry one of those right shot defensemen out of LA. But I'd like to know what you think. Is it possible that the Sens could be talking trade with the Kings about one of their defensemen? Or is there a better solution for the Sens on the defensive front elsewhere? Now, over with the St. Louis Blues, we talked about earlier how they have a playoff spot right now. They're not really doing too well. They started to lose a few games recently, and they're starting to fall out of the playoff picture a bit. They're only 6 points out, but they've played the same amount of games as Calgary, who's in the final wildcard spot, and they're not doing overly well right now. And it seems like they're sort of trending towards being a seller at deadline. We know that they've talked about a lot of players this year. We know Tarasenko and O'Reilly have been the big names. We know that they've also been possibly talking about maybe a guy like Niko Mikkola, Ivan Barbashev. There's been some talk about Josh Levo. But on the most recent insider trading video on TSN, there was some talk that the St. Louis Blues are sort of seeing what the market is for Ryan O'Reilly and that he is probably available right now for a trade. Now, it does sound like there's no guarantee that he will be moved. I do think that the Blues are still trying to get back into the playoff race as best they can. But given the fact that they're 6 points out of a playoff spot, And we know the Blues in the past have been willing to move pending free agents, even when they were in a playoff spot at the trade deadline. It does sort of seem like the Blues are starting to trend towards being sellers right now. I'm not exactly sure how many players they will be willing to sell, but it does sound like O'Reilly's name is possibly out there. You know, O'Reilly's been definitely linked to Toronto Maple Leafs. I know there's probably a lot of other teams out there who could use a good center like a Ryan O'Reilly. I know Minnesota comes to mind. They have a little bit of a weaker center group. The Carolina Hurricanes don't have a really good second line center. They could use a guy like a Ryan O'Reilly. I know the Avalanche really do want a second line center as well. So definitely think that there's a possibilities out there for the Blues to move O'Reilly. Definitely think that will depend on how much all these teams are willing to pay for O'Reilly. And I definitely think that the Blues won't move O'Reilly unless they get a trade package they want. But it does sound like O'Reilly is out there, and he could be moved before the deadline. And lastly, here with the Dallas Stars, it does sound like the Stars may want to improve on this team. And on the Jeff Marek show, Jeff Marek did say that the Stars may use center Radek Faksa as a trade chip to possibly upgrade another position for this team. Now, I know the Stars don't have the best cap space right now, and that they have a little bit of cap problems like most of the teams in the league do right now. And it does seem like they could use Radek Faksa as a trade chip. I know I've been talking over the past year that if there was a player to be moved from Dallas to help improve this team, it probably would be Radek Faksa. Faksa is a pretty good two-way center for the Stars. Put up pretty good point totals over the past few years, usually hitting around 20 points, even though he has a really good defensive game. And this year he's done pretty well too, having 6 goals and 10 points in 49 games. And I think for a team who could use a third-line center, I think they could really look at the Stars and possibly looking at Faksa. Faksa has the $3.25 million cap hit for this year, plus 2 more seasons after it, so he does have a bit of term on his contract. But I think if the Stars were to move him, they could probably upgrade another position. You know, they have a pretty good center group, so maybe they look at a middle six winger who can maybe help them a little bit more offensively. Maybe they look at a defensive upgrade on maybe like a third pair role. But I definitely think if the Stars were to add and they needed to clear some cap space, Faksa would probably wind up being the one to go out. I'd definitely like to know what you think. Does Faksa end up being moved before trade line? Or will the Stars look elsewhere to try and clear some cap space to improve this team? Now that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video and subscribe. I also do a blog which I'll leave a link to in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.